Well, we're waiting for a few more people, but I might just get started. Let me also say, we're not going to take until 6:30. You guys, we know we have a lot of work. And if we really feel pressed for time, we can actually serve food like before our keynote goes. So you're eating while he speaks, but hopefully you won't need to. We are waiting for a few more folks, but it is 10 after. So I'm going to honor those of you who are here on time and at least kick it off. And we're starting with an icebreaker after I say a few words anyway. So those of you who know each other, you're going to need to do this with someone you don't. And it might mean getting up and moving just briefly for 2 minutes. It won't take much. There's somebody first. Let's check this. Because we have quite a few waiting for.
Do you want me to take the check?
Do you mind?
Yeah.
Thank you. Other than, because I might have a hard time remembering your names anyway, although I'll try. Anyway, all right, we'll get started. And we're recording. Literally half of you are abroad. So we're recording, so those folks who are not here tonight can get a copy of the recording of the program part and of Kevin's slides, not of you eating dinner. But welcome. I'm Amy McGlashan. I'm a Director of Academic Initiatives at Center for Careers and Internships, and I oversee the MiddWorks program among a portfolio of cohort internship programs, which means thematic internships that have some sort of relationship to each other, maybe some programming. It's a model that we've used that goes back to 2012 when we developed MiddWorks program and MuseumWorks program. It's so sad, neither of those programs exist right now. But anyway, and then there may be others. Some of you might be familiar with DIVE or the Vermont Business Strategy and Consulting Program. So those are other kinds of programs that we either sponsor or operate because we think it adds value to the internship in some way. I first want to say, so our executive director, Ursula, usually opens this conversation, but she is among, just like some of you, sick and can't really talk without major coughing right now. So she sends her regrets, but I will share the words that she would have said and then also what I had to say. I first want to just acknowledge my colleagues who are here, Karen White, who's the internship coordinator. Let me say her name again, because she's the one who really is she's the operations person behind the paperwork, behind the requirements. So while she might be the one that has to nag you, it's not her fault, but please do pay attention to her emails. She's a really important person. She plays a really important role in the internship program. So now you get to see her in person. So now you really can't ignore her because she's a real person now to you. My colleague Cheryl Whitney Lauer, who oversees internships and who you'll be hearing from tomorrow at the pre-departure training for all funded interns. I'm not going to spend much time on that stuff tonight since she's going to go over it tomorrow, the requirements. My colleague Charles Caldwell, who's our systems administrator, and he's just helping us film tonight. Thank you, Charles. And then Heather Durante, who's responsible for the food and events. And so we obviously couldn't do this event without you. And then I'll introduce Kevin a little bit. For those of you who are arriving as I'm speaking, you're getting well? Okay, awesome, thank you. All right, so here's what we're gonna do tonight. First, I'm just gonna say a few words opening up about MiddWorks, why we have it, what it's about. Max has heard it before. And then we're gonna do just a quick icebreaker, just as a way to find out who you all are and what internships are represented here. And so, and I'll get into that in a minute. Then we're gonna introduce our keynote and who's working with Vermont Futures Project.
They're both abroad.
What's that? They're both abroad. Okay, that's right. That's right. I was going to say, oh, that's embarrassing. They didn't show up for the boss, but I forgot. That's right. Well, I'll explain when I introduce Kevin, but he's an alum. He's executive director of Vermont Futures Project, assistant track coach, and a great friend to this program. And then I'll go over just very briefly at the end, a little bit of what you can expect about what we're thinking about for the program, sort of more the programmatic details. It's very brief because there aren't many this summer. And then we'll break for dinner. And you are welcome to stay for as long as you like. I hope you'll chat with your, especially those of you, many of the internships have more than one intern. So I hope you'll connect with your counterpart, those of you who have a partner, if you haven't met before and spent a little time together, or with each other, and then we'll get you out of here. So with that, I'll just get started. So MiddWorks for Vermont, here's what the script says. It began as a gleam in our eye 4 years ago, or actually many years ago. So I mentioned those other cohort programs, and we always wanted to do, we had food works, we had about food systems, we had museum works about museum studies and cultural institutions. And we always felt that there should be one about Vermont. We're placed in Vermont. We think Vermont's an amazing place in the summer, first of all. We have a workforce development challenge in Vermont where we want more people to stay or come back to live. The quality of life here can't be surpassed. I'll let Kevin tell his story about the assets of Vermont in a few minutes. Then you'll see why we bring him for this all the time. So it always seemed like, let's make this work. And we fund dozens of Vermont internships every year, not just here in Middlebury, but literally across the state. So it seemed like it made sense to develop an internship, a cohort internship program around Vermont. We are committed to the future of our state and vested in into what happens here. We're all citizens of Vermont. We're residents of Vermont. We also think one of the advantages of a cohort internship program is that it's a great way to practice place-based experiential learning, which is it's a method, it's a philosophy, but it's really place-based learning at its best, like how to embed yourself in a context, but around a particular place. And it's a great way to play with what are the sectors that we might be able to tap into here in Vermont, both to add value to those organizations and expose you to some great organizations who we think are doing great work. And our ulterior motive, or maybe not so ulterior, transparent motive, is that we also want you to really like Vermont and maybe consider staying here or coming back here or thinking about work here in different ways. So that is what we try to measure, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And as I said, we think the high quality of life here and an ability to build a purposeful and rewarding life is highly probable. So we'd like you to consider that. 4 years ago, we did our first summer. We launched MiddWorks and funded 25 internships, carefully curated across industry areas, if you will, very broadly around a robust economy and a skilled workforce, of a just society, a healthy population, a green environment, and equitable access to education, and a vibrant arts and cultural scene. So those were kind of the themes, and we went far and not far and wide, actually. And that we developed some programming around it. This summer, we probably will do less, but we gather, for the past 3 years, we've gathered interns and supervisors over the summer to talk about what does work look like in Vermont? How does that differ from maybe other states? What's common, what's not? To participate in other gatherings that expose you to other aspects of work and life in Vermont, maybe do some fun things in Vermont and get you to really love it by going to the lake or going to the mountains, we know all the good swimming holes, other than just the gorge, and to talk about the impact and challenges and opportunities about living in Vermont, and then to serve as ambassadors for future programming. We also require you to live here. So when we really don't want the internships to be fully remote, we want them at least to be hybrid, and not for you to do your remote work in your dorm room, but to be someplace else. We'll talk about what that means. So this is now in its 4th year. This year, we actually doing something different. if you'll notice, there's about 25 of you or close to 25 of you here. You're only half of the group. This year, we decided that really it didn't make any sense to distinguish between MiddWorks for Vermont and any of the other internships who we fund in Vermont. So now all of the Vermont funded internships are MiddWorks for Vermont. There's no lines. And we might emphasize programming less and more about the cross fertilization and social that you might get out of being here. So that's a little bit about what's different this year. And so this year we have 45 MiddWorks interns working for 28 organizations, and you'll learn more about them in a minute. Some of them are ones we've worked with for throughout the years and even before, such as Vermont Futures Project, Green Mountain Care Board, Vermont Natural Resources Council. Is Hannah here? No, actually, because I think she's one. Maple Broadband, to name a few. It also, this year, we have 3 state government organizations. We have news publications, more than one. We have a winery. We have a mountain biking association. We have a private investigator, elder care facility, and a number of other nonprofits that really range from locally organized citizens. Anyone who's doing Climate Economy Action Center, Z, are you here? No. To Vermont-based organizations with national and even international reach, from cultural and educational that sees thousands of visitors every day, like the Shelburne Museum, to agencies with very specialized missions that advocate and build infrastructure and improve the lives of Vermonters. So it's really the range, and you'll hear about that in a little bit in a minute. So I think with that, we will find out who's here and what you're doing. So what I would like you to do for the icebreaker is it's very brief. We're just going to have you pair off, ideally with someone you do not know. I'm looking at this corner of the room, but there's probably other corners too. I just don't know as well. You guys gave yourselves away earlier. So, and it's just all you're doing is introducing yourself to your partner, what's your name, where are you interning this summer, what are you, I forgot my own exercise. Why are you excited about that internship? And then one more thing that you're looking forward to this summer. It doesn't have to be Vermont, that 4th one, but it could be. So all you're going to do is take a minute to do that with each other, and then we're going to come back together and you're going to introduce your partner. So that we know who's here and what the organizations are. So that's a good way to remind all of us, but also just get a good way to get to know each other. All right. So I'm just going to leave it to you to figure out who you're talking to. That's a little random, and then we'll come back together in about. So really, it's like a 2-minute exercise. 1 minute each. I'll call time. If I think it's time to switch. All right. Any questions on the icebreaker? Okay, go. Okay. We'll see it. And then now we'll just go around. And if your partner happens to be someplace else, you want me to go first?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and please speak up because we don't have a microphone and I apologize. Can everyone hear? Please raise your hand if you cannot hear. Please let us know and we will make sure you speak up. Okay?
But right, so I'm Guled, this is Jenny, and she'll be working with the Vermont Northwest Realtors Association. And the reason why she wanted to get into this is because she was interested in marketing.
This is my partner, Guled. We talked about his internship, and he's interested in agriculture and like outdoor wildlife. And he'll be in charge of planning grants for the state.
Yeah.
The what?
The state.
Remember the name of the agency?
Yeah, just Vermont Agricultural Future. That's the state. That's it.
Yeah, Vermont Agricultural Food Market. Yep. And did you talk about one thing that you're looking forward to this summer?
We didn't really talk.
You didn't get that. That's all right. That's all right.
This is Medi. They're going to be working in or a little bit outside Burlington in immigration policy with the state government.
Kind of a long name.
Yeah,
The US Committee for Refugees and Immigrants.
yeah.
Yeah. Federal, actually, but yeah.
Federal.
Yeah.
And it's exciting. They've done some work back in Turkey, the same area, but it'll be interesting to apply that.
And this is Nathan. I'll be working in Common Roots, also up in Burlington. And it's excited to be doing kind of a different part of the work each day. Sometimes like food shows, sometimes making flatbreads. So yeah, sometimes more on camp.
Awesome, thank you.
Hi, that's Henry. They're interning at the town theater, where they're excited to work with kids and just be a part of like a whole bunch of different theater productions and projects with like language school, with kids, with adults, and like further pursue their interest in directing and acting in theater.
Awesome. Go ahead.
That's Matthew. I can't remember the organization, the name of the organization.
Maple Broadband.
Oh yeah, Maple Broadband, where they're like gonna focus on bringing kind of like better internet connection to Addison County. Yeah, I'm looking forward to, excited to where like the little like lunch meetings and like dinner meetings that they'll be having with their supervisor.
Awesome. She's a great supervisor. Yeah. Great. Go ahead.
I'm Charlotte, this is Nana, and she'll be working with Eastview. Is it just called Eastview? Eastview Senior Community. Okay, Eastview Senior Community. They're based in Middlebury, and she'll be focused on developing an initiative that impacts residents of the community with schools around Vermont, and for them to be participants in research.
Hi everyone, this is Charlotte. They're very cool. They like agricultural things and design. They'll be working with Acorn, and their duties consist of manual labor and designing things for them. Also, just administrative tasks too, and collaborating with physicians on like dietary needs. So.
Did none of you get to what you were looking forward to? You just talked about your internship. I hope you're more than serious. Hopeless. Fun. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry, I'm glad that you spent so much time talking about what you're going to be doing now. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, I was talking to Ian over there.
Oh, wait.
Oh,
You didn't introduce. You did. You're good. Sorry. Sorry. My fault.
And he's working for the Addison Independent. And he's mainly just excited to get a lot of experience working in journalism. It's exciting.
Nate?
I hope, I think like every reason to be on, got the name of the organization. But she's excited to be hanging out on similar content.
Great.
I'm Lila. This is Lisa. Mesa, sorry. And she's going to be working for Lemon Fair Company. Yes. Doing like invasive species management controls. Yeah. And community outreach. She's excited about getting some experience in Vermont for the beautiful summer.
Awesome.
So hi everybody, this is Willa. She's a freshman and she's gonna work for EMS, a company that does something about emergency MS. Medical services, exactly. And she's very excited to like get to know people in her environment and learn about different ways.
And hopefully she won't see you at midnight on a Friday night. That will be you.
This is Madeline. She'll be working for 7 days on the newspaper, and she's really excited to take her skills from working on the Middlebury campus to this position. And she's also excited to be in Burlington and to explore Burlington this summer.
Awesome.
This is Campbell. She's, did I say it right?
Mm-hmm.
She's interning with the Middlebury Film Festival as a videographer. And she's a film major, so she's excited to apply that knowledge.
Great, and
in Vermont.
This is Ryan, work for the town hall theater, correct? Ryan's role is really interesting. It's a combination of some technical work, including grant writing and community outreach, as well as acting. And Ryan's really looking forward to spending another summer in Vermont, but this time in Middlebury. He was at Bennington for language school, and so he's looking forward to having a less constrained summer.
This is Cole. He'll be working for the Green Mountain Biking Association. Is that the name of it?
Vermont Biking.
Vermont Biking Association. And he'll be working on a database where basically collecting all the information of all of these hubs that are scattered across Vermont that have access to mountain bikes, so that people can go and spend their time outdoors mountain biking.
Thank you.
I was in a group of 3.
Okay.
I'll introduce them with Ian and Molly.
Great.
Oh.
So did you figure out who's introducing whom? You start and they're gonna have to follow. Yeah, go for it. So you do one of them.
Well, they already went.
Oh, I see. Okay, so who's gonna introduce him?
I'll do it.
Okay.
He's working for 7 days while he's doing civic stuff. He's really excited to be in Vermont for another summer and go swimming.
Awesome. All right.
This is Adrian, and she's working for the Green Mountain Healthcare Board, and they do help out, I think, with helping more Vermonters have access to healthcare. Right? And it's the first summer in Vermont, so she's very excited, and it'll be a little bit of Montpelier once a week, and the rest of the days here. So, yeah.
This is Max. He's working at Shelburne Farm, and so he's going to be working on the farm and then also working out their camp for kids. And he's done something like this before, past internship, so he's excited. Yeah.
They're only dormant, just so you know. The summer, the market, the summer market, the Middlebury Summer Market, they're transforming it to be more around the whole Better Middlebury partnership. Yes. Next year, it's going to be very exciting. Yeah, we just couldn't pull it together for this year. Anyway, awesome. Yes. Hi, Maya. Well, there's others to go too, but go ahead. Yeah.
I'm Maya.
What are you doing and why are you excited about it, and what else are you excited about this summer?
Acorn. On exchange degree. I worked with them last summer and it was just a blast. Going to be like delivering local veggies and working with farmers and hopefully learning how to write grants. And I'm from Vermont, so I'm happy to say.
Yes, you get.
This is Gabe. He's gonna be working with the Green Mountain Community Care Group as well, partially in Montpelier, and he is excited to have a public facing job kind of, and writing with his students.
Awesome.
Hi everyone, this is Anna Lee. She's gonna be working at Oakland Peak, which is a vineyard in town. She's excited. She's done some agricultural work before, but not specifically with wine, or something she's interested in. So looking forward to sort of branch out into that.
Great. We got everybody right. So you can see the array, and that's not even all the organizations that are represented, but most of them, because many, as we said, have 2, and many of you are abroad. But anyway, without further ado, because I want to keep things moving, but thank you. And it's nice to get to know you a little bit. I know we're going to try to do names. We should have brought name tags next time. But anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin. So we kind of tap Kevin for everything related to this program because it fits. He's executive director of the Vermont Futures Project. As I mentioned, he does take 2 interns, and he'll describe the work, but he works with the Chamber of Commerce to basically build the case, use the data to build the case for why Vermont needs people and why people need Vermont. And now they're out with a really exciting action plan, which I'll talk about a little bit. What I want to say is, so you'd think he was either a poli-sci or an econ major, and he was not. So that is also to say you can do anything with your major. He's a perfect example of that, class of 14, assistant track coach. You were IGS, right? No. Yeah.
Environmental studies.
Environmental studies. Okay. So you can see there's a relationship, and that's a whole nother conversation, not for today. That's the other part of my job. I just thought I'd point that out, but I'm going to also just turn over and say thank you for Kevin, because he's going to tell you, he's going to lay the groundwork for both the assets that we have and the challenges that we have, and why we invite you to participate in that. So there you go.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thanks for having me here. As Amy mentioned, I'm a 2014 grad, environmental studies. I was also an education studies minor. And right after graduating, I had the privilege of teaching 9th grade earth science at Middlebury Union High School. Super fun gig. And one of the most important professional lessons I learned from that was to translate the work that I do in a way that a 9th grade farm boy from Madison County can understand. And that has served me quite well. I was fascinated to hear the array of organizations that you're going to be working with and for, and the communities that you'll serve. I think if you can put your education into the context of the lives of the people that you're working with, you'll have success. I am very privileged to have this role with the Future Project in giving back to the state of Vermont. I grew up in Vermont. I want to grow old here too. I ended up in Vermont of all places because my parents immigrated from Southeast China back in 1986. Yeah, they ended up in Vermont. So you might be asking, well, how the heck did that happen? I have an aunt that married an American, and they happen to have a home in Shelburne, Vermont. That was the one social connection that my parents had to the entire country. That's how they ended up here. And I'm so blessed to say that they did end up in Vermont because they found not only the economic opportunity that they were looking for, they made a very brave leap of faith to leave behind everything they knew to pursue their American dream. In addition to the economic opportunity, they also found a community of folks who cared about them, invested in their success, helped my parents raise 3 kids, put them through college. They were able to buy a home. So I try to pay it forward through this work to make sure that opportunity continues to be part of the Vermont narrative, not only today, but moving forward into the future too. So I bring that lens to this work of the Futures Project to answer our mission question of how can we use data to support the evolution of Vermont's economy towards a thriving future full of opportunity for all. What you have in front of you is the economic action plan that we launched in January of this year. So this is hot off the press. And this is our answer to that mission question in this moment. How do we shift Vermont on a path towards affordability and abundance? Now, I have the privilege of traveling around the state over the past 2 years and speaking with Vermonters, over 5,000 total in-person interactions across all 14 counties. These are some of the themes that came out of those conversations. I don't think any of these phrases or words will come as a surprise. Vermonters are saying that the cost of living is a challenge, that healthcare can be a challenge, housing, but they also shared their hopes, dreams, and ambitions for the future as well. This work of putting together a plan was in response to those needs, those challenges, those hopes and dreams. What I heard was I was able to distribute the sentiments into 3 major buckets, and it's captured here in this framework. So this Venn diagram shows 3 circles. One says, I want ample services. Another one says, I want low density. And the third says, I want low cost of living. And Vermont right now is at the intersection, the blue and the green circles. And the result is a high cost of living. I want you to know the context that you're going to be working in. So many Vermonters said that affordability is the major challenge, that they want a lower cost of living, that they want Vermont to be a viable place, not only for themselves, but maybe for future generations to choose as a home as well. But how do we get there from here? And this is the major challenge. And again, this is part of the work that you'll be contributing to is which pathway are you going to choose? some of the conversations around the scarcity pathway, these are already happening. I heard a few of you are working with the Green Mountain Care Board. Healthcare is a major topic right now, and school consolidation is another conversation that's playing out in a lot of communities because the population has stagnated, it's getting older, there are fewer children in our schools. So is it viable to keep small schools in rural communities open without some level of growth? So that scarcity pathway, that's kind of a scary conversation. The alternative is an abundance pathway, accelerating housing, growing the population, bringing more working age people here, or keeping them here after they graduate from high school or college. Now, this work is about getting to root causes, connecting the dots. The symptoms, these are the headlines we see on a day-to-day basis. Certainly 7 Days does a great job covering many of these stories, but when we trace the symptoms back to root causes, we get to people and places. Those are the two major frameworks in this plan, specifically demographics and housing scarcity. The Green Mountain Care Board had commissioned a report on healthcare transformation, and an external consultant came in and said the number one thing that will improve the healthcare system in Vermont is more housing. Because when you don't have housing, there are health impacts to that, which then shows up in the emergency room and adds to the cost of the healthcare system. More housing means an easier time attracting and retaining nurses and physicians. So again, being able to find what are those root causes to the symptoms that we're facing. I'll cover demographics quickly and then go into housing afterwards. So this is the age distribution of Vermont's population in the year 2000. Now, my least favorite part about presenting this slide is admitting that 2000 was 25 years ago. Yeah, it's scary for some of us in the room. In that year, there were about 226,000 Vermonters between the ages of 25 to 49. So that is the workforce. That's the tax base in terms of who's contributing to income taxes, property taxes, sales taxes. That's also the commercial ratepayers when it comes to health insurance. So in that same year, there were about 77,000 Vermonters aged 65 plus. So when we fast forward and look at where we are as a state now, there are about 194,000 Vermonters between 25 and 49. So that working age population has shrank by about 30,000. And the 65 plus population has almost doubled. Now, this has knock-on effects when it comes to the economy, when it comes to workforce, when it comes to sustaining the programs that help our neighbors. But to simplify things, I'll actually use a sports metaphor, since it was mentioned that I do a bit of coaching here for the college. I work with the jumpers on the track team, but I'll actually highlight the success of our field hockey team here at Middlebury. They're on an incredible run of seven straight NCAA championships. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because when we think about workforce, if we just say that's our team, Team Vermont, right? We had a lot of success in the 2000s, and now we're at a place where our workforce or our team, we have a lot of juniors and seniors who are about to graduate from that workforce. And to sustain Team Vermont success over the coming decades, we need to recruit a new class of freshmen to join this team to make sure that we can continue winning. Now, going from demographics to workforce, I'll highlight how this demographic transition has impacted the labor market with this chart here. So this shows a ratio of job seekers to job openings. A decade ago, for every one person looking for, for every one job opening, there were about 2 people looking for work. Right? There were more people looking for work than work available. This ratio is pretty much inverted in the past decade. So for every one job seeker, there's about 2 open jobs. Now I highlight that ratio because that's a really important one for you all in thinking about what might come after college. In a labor market where there are more job openings than job seekers, the job seekers have an advantage. that means you, right? This isn't the case in every labor market around the country, right? There are some places where there are still more people looking for work than work available. So keep this in mind when you think about what comes next. The Vermont labor market is favorable to job seekers right now. And going back to that workforce gap, on an annual basis, and this is covered in the plan, the Vermont economy should be trying to add about 13,500 people into the workforce to close that gap over the next decade. And that's because, again, back to demographics, we have a lot of folks who are projected to retire, about 17,150 annually. And to contextualize that, there are about 5,300 12th grade students in the entire state of Vermont. Those two numbers don't balance each other out. So we can try to close that gap with some more college graduate retention. But at the end of the day, we also need some more in-migration, whether domestic or international, more people from elsewhere coming to the state. There are only really two high-level sets of strategies. Efficiency, so how do we do more with what we have? How do we decrease barriers to labor force participation and empower people to seek economic opportunity? And then there's expansion strategies, right? Because what if efficiency alone isn't enough? I mentioned we only have 5,300 12th grade students and 17,000 retirees. So that's why we need both. So I guess and efficiency and expansion. Now, Amy gave away one of my favorite phrases, which is Vermont needs more people. No, it's okay. We can see that in the demographic data, but more people need Vermont too. Why do I say this? And what does that even mean? So we've seen an uptick in interest from all over the country for people relocating to Vermont. There was a surge during the pandemic, and certainly that was reflected in census data. We also saw it in housing market prices, which continue to stay elevated because that demand persists. People want to be here. And that for individuals or for families can be for a variety of reasons. But I'll highlight two trends that have been not only durable, but continuing to build. One of those reasons is climate. In many projections of climate vulnerability, just across the United States, the Northeast is relatively favorable compared to many other parts of the country. That's not to say there won't be impacts to Vermont because of climate change, but on a relative basis, this is a desirable place. If you live in coastal city in Florida, it might not be on the map if there's sea level rise. If you live in a place where there's chronic drought or a wildfire, you may need Vermont. There's also been a surge of interest in Vermont for what I call values-based migration. I've been working with a rural geographer at the University of Vermont, tracking reasons why people move from one place to another. And after the November elections last year, there was a distinct increase in the data of people saying they're interested in moving to a state like Vermont. So if we need more people, then that's going to add more demand to the housing market. And that's the other piece of the puzzle that we need to solve. In recent decades, there's been a deceleration of new housing construction. And this has put pressure on folks who are already living here too, let alone creating enough capacity for new folks to move here. But this is solvable. And doing so can also be part of long-term solutions for sustainability. Now, I've borrowed a few graphics here from my friends at the Energy Action Network, and I'll highlight the one on the right, which is data from an agency of transportation study that models 3 different growth scenarios. One of them, the one on the far right here, this is development patterns that are dispersed, kind of like a business as usual approach. And what they found was adding more people with dispersed development increases greenhouse gas emissions. Not much of a surprise. There was another scenario where they modeled out smart growth. So how do we locate people closer to the places that they need to access on a regular basis, whether that's work, school, hospitals. And in that scenario, high growth actually decreases the overall greenhouse gas emissions by more than a low growth scenario because it reduces vehicle miles traveled. So this is just a really, to me, fascinating opportunity that starts to align economic imperatives with environmental values, and it can also improve access and equity along the way. To me, that has been the most fun and sometimes frustrating part of my work is sometimes the economic and environmental and equity perspectives are pitted against each other as if it's a zero-sum game. And I want one of your takeaways to be that actually we can align these priorities. This plan is a step in that direction, but the day-to-day work that you'll be doing with your organizations can also contribute to building that consensus towards collective goals. Now, this is a question that I put in the Vermonter poll. It's a public opinion survey run out of the University of Vermont. And I had asked, are you supportive of creating new housing to increase the population in Vermont overall? What about in your town? What about in your neighborhood? So an interesting dynamic emerges here, right? The closer it gets to home, the harder it is to say yes. And one of the phrases that jumps to mind when I present this, people will say, oh, that's NIMBYism. That could be one conclusion. But again, I want your takeaway from this to be that at every scale, whether it's the Vermont scale, town scale, or the neighborhood scale, there are more yes voices than no voices. And the reason why I highlight that as a takeaway is, again, through the work of your internship, I want you all to think about how to empower those yes voices. If housing's a human right, then it can be right to build housing. Now, the economic plan sets ambitious long-term targets to increase the working age population, growing the overall population to 802,000 by 2035. And then in order to do that, certainly increasing the housing at a proportional rate would have to happen too. Some of you might be wondering, how did you land exactly on 802,000, especially if you grew up in Vermont? That might seem like a familiar number of the area code. It's based on that workforce gap analysis, that 13,500 that I mentioned earlier. When we project that out, 2035, 2040, the numbers get in the 800,000 range. And then, yeah, we picked 802 because of the area code. So now it's a very memorable target that people have been talking about and socializing. Marketing makes a big difference. That rate of growth is only 2% per year. So instead of saying we need to add 155,000 people to the state of Vermont, think about how to take complex situations and simplify it and have locally relevant conversations. Back to what I said about my work in Middlebury Union High School, working with ninth graders, a lot of the times it was, how do I take earth science concepts and present it in a way that was relevant to who they were in that moment and what they valued? That 2% number, if you live in a town of 1,000 people, that means how do you welcome 20 new residents next year? That's a very different conversation than saying we need to add 155,000 Vermonters, right? If you want to add 20 people to your town of 1,000, that means building 8 to 10 homes. So translation of complex ideas, that's the takeaway on this slide. Now, I'll end with this chart here. So I mentioned we've had stagnating growth in terms of population and housing. When we take a look at historical data, the last 2 decades are the outlier. We're living through unprecedented times. I hear that phrase a lot. According to the data, yes, we are. That long-term goal of 802,000 would get us back on track. Now, I share all this not only as a way to shamelessly self-promote the work that I'm doing, but it's to set you up again with the context in which you're going to be working through this MiddWorks program. So I want to wrap up by saying Vermont Vermont is a leading indicator. What do I mean by that? Vermont's one of the oldest states in the country by median age. We have some of the oldest housing stock, and we're experiencing the economic impacts of demographic transition. And we're experiencing that in Vermont before most of the country is experiencing that. That's the privilege of being one of the oldest states. But when we take a look at national data, the rest of the US is trending this way. Fertility rates are declining, right? The country's getting older, and the workforce challenges that we're facing here are some of the issues that may appear in other states as well. So Vermont has an opportunity to be a leader. We're either going to be a leader in what to do or what not to do. And one of those things will happen. And in this moment, in this critical moment, we need good leadership, which is where you all come in. Because we can't build the future without the perspectives of the people that have to live in that future, right? And I want you to show up every day to your internships and share with your supervisors, share with the partners you're working with, what is it that would keep you here in Vermont? What are the things that you're going to be contributing towards and working towards that would make this a viable option for you, right? None of us are going to force you to stay, but hopefully you can be part of crafting that future that you want to say yes to. And with that, I'll wrap up with a reminder of why MiddWorks. This is all part of why more people need Vermont. Thank you very much.
Ready for questions? Any other questions for Kevin?
Can you talk about the new 250 amendments?
Oh, yes.
And that they're trying to make more housing and concentrate it. I went to the Rural Development Conference, and it was like a room packed full of people who felt really, really strongly about it, but it was right after it was passed, so I still don't know what's been happening.
Sure. That has been a hot topic. So Act 250 is the land use regulation law in Vermont that was passed in 1970. To give you a little bit of historical context, there was a surge in migration to Vermont, so this back to the land movement, and there was rapid development happening. And it was at a time when there weren't too many regulations in place. So some of the development was ecologically harmful. So in that context, Act 250 was probably the right thing at the right time to say that Vermont's natural beauty and environmental sustainability was under threat. So when that was put in place, it was also before some of the federal rules around environmental protection. So Vermont was a leader at that time. Now, regardless of the original intent, one of the downstream impacts, which we can see in the data, is it has slowed down development to the point where the ability to develop new housing hasn't been able to keep up with the demand and the absolute basic needs that some people have just for any type of housing. The recent changes have loosened some of that a bit in a way that tries to incentivize new housing in a smart growth way to increase density, especially in downtown areas and village centers. There's mixed feelings on it. On the one hand, there are those who say the changes empower large communities and small communities who might want to grow are still having challenges. And then there's also strong feelings from the other side that say we shouldn't make any changes to it ever because Act 250 has produced the Vermont that we know and love. But my opinion is that leaves some people out of the conversation.
I think we have time for maybe one more question.
Anyone? You spoke mostly about like rural, you were saying rural areas, but is this in bigger places like Burlington or Montpelier? Is it the same severity or is it different?
Yeah, so interestingly, when we look at where growth has or hasn't happened in Vermont, it won't come as much of a surprise that there has been growth in and around the Burlington area in Chittenden County, and also around resort towns. And then when we take a look at where depopulation has happened, right, because a lot of towns and villages actually have fewer people today than they did in the past. you start to see that rural urban divide. And the reason why I said that some of the smaller towns and villages feel left out of the recent changes is because they're the ones that are actually craving growth the most because there's been depopulation. If you get to a critical threshold where there aren't enough people to maintain public infrastructure and not enough kids in the schools, and things start to shut down, right? And then you might get into a vicious cycle of decline that's really hard to bounce back from. If you were to just restore every town back to its historical peak, we would add about 70,000 more people to Vermont, and that's just revitalizing rural areas. But they need to be able to build housing and new infrastructure in order for that revitalization to be viable.
Any others?
Is there a lot of, not hate, but like how do people feel about seasonal, like people from New York coming up just during the summer and living here, and how big of a population is that?
Yeah, great question. There's definitely feelings. Some strong feelings. The data show that overall the rate of second homes or seasonal homes in Vermont is quite high compared to many other states. But to separate out a specific piece of that, I think a lot of the attention has been on short-term rentals in particular. It's actually a pretty small number of the overall housing stock, on the order of like 1 to 3%. The town-to-town variability is high though. So even though overall it might be 1 to 3%, in some towns it's 30, 40%, depending on where those towns are. If they're located close to, let's say, a resort, that's where there's strong demand for that type of housing, short-term rentals. Conversations are happening right now at the state level in terms of should there be new tax classifications and an increase on the cost of owning a second or third or fourth home. We'll see how that plays out in this legislative session.
But it is like the first time, I mean, that they really talked about it, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's right. But my thoughts on it in terms of just from a purely data perspective is that sometimes those conversations, whether it's about second homes or short-term rentals, are scapegoating a very small percentage of the overall problem, which is just lack of housing scarcity, and actually creating new housing stock would alleviate a lot of the cost pressures that many Vermonters are most frustrated by. And that is entirely solvable.
We are going to transition, but Kevin, you're staying for dinner?
Yes, so stay for dinner.
And I think what we'll do in a few minutes when we break for dinner, maybe we'll have move some chairs around this day, so we're not all like in this, so we can actually have a conversation.
So my contact information is up here. If any of you have questions about this, want to stay in touch, feel free to add me on LinkedIn as well. Take this economic action plan with you, share it with your supervisors. Again, I hope this is helpful contextual information for why Vermont and the state in which you'll be working so diligently on. And I really appreciate your willingness to say yes to MiddWorks and to contribute to the vitality of Vermont. So thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to be, since we're recording for the students abroad, we'll also be getting his slides. So if anyone of you want the slide, we're happy to share it with everybody. Might as well.
It's not my data, it's our data.
That's right, exactly. And you may find in the context, particularly some of you very specifically, but even generally in conversation or in your work, you actually may want to refer to some of these. So we'll just get them to all y'all. So very quickly, I'm just going to say, because you can start smelling the food, so I want to get you to your food, but I just want to quickly just go over what we're thinking for this summer for MiddWorks, very briefly. And we have kind of I'm one of those 65 whatever the bar was that's like increasing. So I'm actually retiring in the middle of the summer, as is my colleague Cheryl. So we probably won't do the level of programming that we normally would do with MiddWorks because we're still trying to figure out what's actually going to happen. Because, so for example, we in the past summers, as Max knows, we've actually convened you in the middle of the summer. I think I said earlier, with your supervisors to continue this conversation, to build off of this and say, what does work look like in Vermont and what would keep you here? Like we really engaged MiddWorks students in helping us think through the challenge. We still hope to do something like that. It might be more of a culminating event, like the very last day of the internship, or something like that. So that's all to say, pay attention. If it doesn't happen, it's just because there was too much of a lapse because of things happening here in terms of being able to hire my replacement. So it might be that we just don't have the capacity to do as much with this program this summer. So you might be off the hook, you know. But I did want to at least go over a few of the other things. And what I would also encourage you to do is instead, you guys are working at some amazing places, Children Farms, Shelburne Museum, the Committee for Refugees and Immigrants, Acorn. We would love, and we are happy to help facilitate any social things that would get you all to Shelburne Farms for an afternoon, that would volunteer for Acorn, doing gleaning or working the food hub, or for USCRI working with immigrants. So if there's interest in doing some of that, or take it upon yourselves, we'll be sure to distribute your contact information and where you're working and your emails. I won't distribute phone numbers. I don't even have them, but we'll leave that to you. And particularly those of you at Champlain, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So that's really the opportunity. It also might be really fun to go to Centennial Field and go to a minor league ball game or go to July 4th. I think, frankly, the fireworks here in Burlington are better than, it's not like I've seen a ton, but I think they're better than Boston's. So maybe we organize something to go there. So I would love to plant those seeds with you and see what kinds of social things we might be able to do for you all, and particularly those of you up in Burlington. We do have a summer guide like that we put together last year of like, it's everything from annual events to music, free music and food and like hikes and yeah.
Yep, we did it in collaboration with the hub.
Yeah.
Because they also put together something and then we did a whole lot. So we did one for the Burlington area. We did one another list that was specifically Middlebury as the county. And then some things that are just the drive. Some of you will be going obviously right after, like to go over the mountain, as we say.
Yeah.
So over to Fairleigh, they have a lot of like free music things on Thursday nights.
Yeah.
Really inexpensive.
Lots of free,
so much
outdoor
free music. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you just have to buy the food or whatever.
Yeah, or carpool. Yeah.
So we'll get those out to you. So you'll be able to really explore Vermont, because I love to travel, but I really prefer to be here in the summer. There's no better place. I know Maya agrees. I know Kevin agrees. You got the lakes, you got the mountain. I don't need to sell you. You'll figure it out. But so I just want you to have a great time. And I do know some of you put that down in your essays that you wanted to experience Vermont as a place that you experience that's not on campus. So now's your opportunity. And we welcome and invite you to do that. So just really quickly, you're going to hear tomorrow, Cheryl's going to talk about the requirements for funding for funded interns. So I'm not going to go over them. The only thing I'll say is tomorrow she's going to talk about reflection posts on our what we call the Experiential Learning Lifecycle Hub. That's the reflection space. It's a gorgeous space and opportunity for all interns to just share a reflection. But what I wanted to say to you all is we would like to see one reflection on like Vermont, like make your reflection about working in Vermont or about something you did in Vermont or what's Vermont based. And if that means that you still have something else you want to say, then post twice. but please make at least one post. You're required to do one post overall. And I'm just saying, do at least one post that has to do with your experience in Vermont. Okay, because we do read them. I will read them even after July 3rd if you promise to do it. Because I do care about this program and about you. And then the other, just likewise, Cheryl tomorrow is going to talk about the end of internship evaluation. In addition, I think we will still do, it's a very brief survey just for MiddWorks students about your experience in Vermont. About, did it change your thinking about Vermont? What impact did it have on you? Do you see yourself living here? Not. If not, why not? You know, that's data that informs not just us, but it might, but it might inform Kevin's work. It is part of the puzzle about what can keep Vermont lively. So those are the only two things. Just very quickly, housing. So those of you who are going to be up at Champlain, we'll be back in touch with you very soon to confirm. But pencil in June 9th, which is the first night of the internship. We're going to gather you for snacks and social, just to launch you all. And Dana Anderson, my colleague, and I will be the points of contact for that. Res Life, for those of you who are living on campus here, you should be hearing from Res Life soon. You should be getting your checks end of May, early June. That all of your invoices were just submitted with everybody else's. But if you have problems with that, check in with accounts payable, not us. We do not know how to check whether or not you set up your direct deposit correctly. You all didn't get an award letter with everybody else the other day because you already got your award letter. When I sent you an email in March confirming your hire, and that was your award letter, so you didn't need another one. You just got it before you that, because your internships come with funding. So I know that was a question from some of you, so I'm just verifying. We'll be maybe scheduling check-ins in late June or early July before I leave. My last day is July 3rd. I usually do it a little later, but I might do that. So if you want to have a conversation, like I go up to Champlain for an evening, and then I might schedule hours at the CCI offices here, so that if you wanted to check in about something. So I will try to do that before July 3rd, probably that last week, that first week of July. And I think that's it. I'm really rushing through because I really want to get you to dinner now that it's 6:15. So any questions? All right, we'll break for dinner. It's all there. It's from Shiretown. Help yourselves. Move yourselves around, please. And thank you for your patience.